Hello, casual fanatics. Shadowbird Jeremy here, and this is the beginning of a new series of special D&D builds that I've come out with. Uh, I somehow managed to be able to get where you can see my screen now. Managed to get OBS to work so I can do that, which is a very good thing because that's going to help out a lot with this particular show. Also, I want to say a few things before I start this new series. First, shout out to one of the inspirations for this project, Nerdarchy. If you search Nerdarchy on YouTube, they are a great bunch of guys who are, well, more experienced with D&D than I am, to be quite frank about it. And they do some great vids on various different elements of tabletop gaming and D&D, and they also do some playthroughs. One of which actually involves the Wizards of the Coast Unearthed Arcana supplement that they had put up as a free PDF on their website. The Modern Magic Unearthed Arcana. They actually have a session where they play themselves, for lack of a better phrase. And that was one of the inspirations for this, as well as the Modern Magic Unearthed Arcana itself. So, shout out to them. Y'all are awesome. The other thing that inspired this is that, of course, you know, I'm a dork, and I have a pretty big fondness for the likes of Power Rangers and Kamen Rider and such. So, for the longest time, I've been wanting to create that kind of superhero in Dungeons and Dragons, and I've played around with that in various different ways. I think at one point I had a build that was multi-classed between sorcerer and monk. It didn't really work that well, but I was just starting out and trying to figure these things out in my head. It wasn't really optimized. When I saw this, though, the light bulb went on. Because before I saw this, I had thought, okay, if I want to do this, I'm going to have to basically create like a whole new system in order to do Tokusatsu heroes, you know, armored superheroes in a Dungeons and Dragons settings. Of course, this was before someone pointed out that you can do that in Big Eyes Small Mouth, but I digress. When this came out, there were certain mechanics that just put the light bulb on in my head. And we'll get to those in a little bit. But yeah, this and Nerdarchy, both major inspirations for this. Besides the fact that I love playing Dungeons and Dragons, I don't get to play it at all anymore. I miss it, but it's still a fun interest of mine. So, without any ado, let's get started with this particular build. Now, as I said, Unearthed Arcana is the starter, the inspiration, one of the inspirations for this. And one of the mechanics in particular that inspired me was the fact that now, with Wizards, you have an additional arcane tradition. That additional arcane tradition is called Technomancy, which uses technology to cast spells. So, say cell phones or laptops or something like that. Water. Yay. So, that was the first thing. And the other thing that struck my fancy was a specific feature of Technomancy. Because 6th level Technomancers get this spell here, Program Spell. At 6th level, you can insert a spell within an electronic device of your choosing, so that by touching a key or flicking a switch using an action, the spell activates. So, oh, and of course, the computing power of this device must be equal or greater to a mobile phone. So, say for instance, you have a Samsung Galaxy. Yes, that is Ami Mizuno as my lock screen image. Shut up. Anyway, you have a cell phone, a smartphone like that. If you're a 6th level Technomancer, you can use a device much like that and load up spells like, say, Mage Armor. That, plus a little bit of flavoring, gives you basically the beginnings of either a Power Ranger or a Kamen Rider or a Metal Hero, depending on how you flavor things up. All you have to do is describe it, the armor is coming on the person as if it were, a spandex suit with a helmet. Funny how that works. And so all of these builds that I'm going to be doing are based around 6 levels of Wizard and 3 levels of Monk because, well, Power Rangers, Kamen Riders, and such, they're mostly martial arts characters, So there are probably other ways that you can flavor that in order for it to work much the same way and be able to do things the same way. Like, say, have you and your DM agree that, your armor is just magical enough that you can summon it and dispel it with, a hand motion or a snap or a voice command. There are so many different ways that you can do this. I really wanted to do it through the Wizard path because of the enhancements and capabilities that it gives you. So, with that in mind, let's start with this specific build. Her name is Elyn Jansen, and she is the leader character of my Chroma Squad team, Project Fusion. Yes, the leader of my team is a woman. And, because I can't say screw your tropes quite enough, she's both black and the Pink Ranger. There is no Red Ranger on Project Fusion. The leader is the Pink Ranger. Let's face it, you're never going to see that happen in Saban or Toei. I guarantee it. Anyway, being a Power Ranger, of course, alignment is going to be lawful good because while law enforcement and the military seem to be largely useless in, say, the Power Rangers universe, they still work with law enforcement wherever necessary. Now, the interesting part here is going to be these ability scores. There are several ways you can determine ability scores. Of course, you can pick a standard array. An example of a standard array would be 16, 14, 12, 10, 10, 8. But you can also pick either by point buy, which I did not do, or what I did, which is 46 minus 1. What does that mean? No, I don't take the result of 46 and then subtract 1. What you do is you roll 46 and drop the low. So, for instance, I'm going to do an example roll for you. Okay, I'm going to show my dice in sequence. 5, 4, 2, and a 1. Now, of course, since we are dropping the lower, you'll take the 1 out, and 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 2 is 11. So that's, and then some people like to go just roll down the line, roll strength first, roll dexterity first, etc., and do it that way, and then pick your class that way. I had a specific build that I wanted to go for, so instead what I did was I went ahead and rolled them all, and then picked and chose as I thought would be necessary for the build that I wanted to go for. I actually rolled these scores here. Hand to the universe. By all the weird and wonderful things that exist in all of reality, I legitimately rolled these scores. So, yeah, I rolled a 15 for strength. I rolled a 15, put it in strength, because I want that to be the primary stat. I rolled a 14, two 14s actually, and I wanted to put those in dexterity and intelligence for the monk and wizard classes. Why the strength? Well, you'll see. I rolled a 13. I wanted to make sure that was in wisdom. I rolled a 12, so I went ahead and put that in charisma. And then when I rolled the 11, I put that in constitution because that's kind of sort of the dump stat. So a pretty good distribution and a pretty wide distribution of pretty narrow distribution. They're all pretty close to each other, which is honestly what I want for a leader character. I don't want the leader character to be the uber standout above all the rest. I want them to be the one who is solid, but is mostly there to make sure that this team remains a team and remains focused on their goals. So having a nice, solid distribution like this is fine. Now, a little bit of a spoilers. The other class besides Wizard and Monk that we're going with is Charisma. And if you look at the requirements for the prerequisites in order to be in a class, one of the prerequisites for Paladin is a Charisma of 13. We only have a Charisma of 12 here. How does that work? Well, I'll show you on the next screen. It works because the race that I chose was human. Various different races have different bonuses that they give to the characters. And in this case, the bonus that was given to Elyn was, because she's a human, her ability scores are all +1. Which means, if we go back, that means her base stats for being a human are actually 16, 14, 12. Let me start it again. I messed that up. 16, 15, 12, 15, 14, and 13. See what I did there? Okay, so let's move on to classes. By the way, there is also another feat that you can give humans that makes them a variant class, where you can change which ability scores get boosted and put higher bonuses in a couple of ability scores if you so choose. I did not choose that one. I wanted to go ahead and give the +1 to all, again, because it ensured that my charisma would be enough to have a paladin. So, like I said, classes. We have the base 6 of wizard. I went ahead and gave a full 6 of monk just because I didn't know what else to do, and I wanted to fill it out to 20th level. And then 8 whopping levels of paladin. Yes, she's primarily going to be a paladin because paladins are traditionally a leader type class in D&D. And when you have certain levels in certain classes, usually about 2nd or 3rd level, you can choose subpaths, archetypes, for each of the classes. In this case, with the monk, you get a monastic tradition. And I went ahead and went with open hand because that really helps with the martial arts theme of things. Helps give boost to their unarmed strikes and their ability to attack without using a weapon. If you want to go and really emphasize the elemental differences between the various different members of your team, you can also go for elements and then specialize in individual elements if you so choose. I went ahead and went open hand because, again, I wanted to focus more on the martial arts than the elements. And besides, with the wizard, we've got the elements covered. With the paladin, you have 2 things that you can choose. You can choose an oath and a fighting style. For her fighting style, since she is the leader character, she's primarily going to be using a sword. And only a sword, although she can also use sidearms because that's an additional sub-feature of technomancy wizards. But with the dueling fighting style, she can wield, as long as she's only wielding one melee weapon, like say a long sword, appropriately flavored for the team, and no other weapon, that actually gives her an advantage in battle. So that's why I went ahead and gave her dueling. If you want if you want your leader to specialize with large weapons like great swords and such, you could also choose great weapon fighting if you so chose. And for the oath, really this oath is not super important. I went ahead and went with Oath of Devotion because I see the leader as being devoted to making sure that the team works like a well-oiled machine. Depending on how you have your team flavored, you could very easily go with Oath of the Ancients if they're part of a power that has lasted for millennia and has a legacy behind it. Or if you're playing a game where your team is focused mainly on a specific enemy and getting revenge on them, then you can go with Oath of Vengeance. By no circumstances do I recommend the Oathbreaker. Why? Because if you make your paladin Oathbreaker, you are basically making them a product of the 90s comic book scene. You are making them an anti-hero, and that is not what we necessarily need in Power Rangers. Not to say that it couldn't work in Power Rangers, but when I'm making a superhero character, I want a superhero, not someone I am going to hate. Moving on. The arcane tradition, again, we actually went with technomancy. The reason why it says artificer down here is because this file that I used to create the character with, this spreadsheet file, doesn't have any of the unearthed arcana options built in, which, is fine. We can adjust that in, put in custom as we need to. I could not put a custom in, unfortunately, for the arcane tradition, because of the sub feats involved, but that's okay as long as you know what's really going on and your DM knows what's really going on. If you use this particular file that I found, then it's not going to be that big of a deal. Background, the really big thing in 5e was done also a little bit in 4e, but really came into its own in 5th edition, is the background system, because it actually gives you bonuses to some of your skills, proficiencies to some of your skills, and also additional little features. Since we're dealing with superheroes, of course, I went ahead with folk heroes, and it also gives an additional bonus, because one of the tool proficiencies, if you see here, land vehicles. If you have a GM who's nice enough to play ball with you, you could very easily spin that as in a part of a mech or a Zord. Just saying. Advancements and feats. Once you hit every 4 levels, if I remember correctly, then you can boost your ability scores if you so choose. You can boost 2 of your ability scores by 1, or you can eschew those ability score improvements and take feats instead. And what I did was I went with the feats. So here are the feats that I took for Elyn. The first one being Great Weapon Master, which really gives her a little bit of bonus with heavy melee weapons. So if I give her, say, a great sword, that would help her out with that. Give her an extra attack when she scores a critical hit with a melee weapon as well. So that's a nice little bonus. Inspiring Leader, of course, because she is a leader character. That's, I figured, a good thing to have. It's kind of a semi-heal because it does give your allies some temporary hit points. And it's kind of like, that one moment where the Rangers are against the wall and the leader stands up and makes that rousing speech, and the rest of the team rises up behind him and they transform, and the title music is playing and they're off to kick all kinds of ass. That kind of awesomeness. You can't get enough of that in D&D, those cinematic experiences. I love getting those. I love having those. Another feature, gotta scroll all the way down here. What other features did I pick? I missed one. Oh, dual wielder. Say if you have your character have, well, for lack of a better phrase, a mid-season upgrade, and have doing two different melee weapons, one in each hand, then this is a good feat to have them. So I went ahead and gave that to Elyn. And then all the way down near the bottom, I also gave the feat Weapon Master, which can boost either strength or dexterity. For the sake of attacks, I went ahead and chose strength. Also, I made sure that she now has proficiency with the longsword, the scimitar, just in case, the greatsword, again, just in case you decide to upgrade her weaponry, and the laser pistol. Yes, laser pistols. Keep in mind, A, this is modern magic, and B, we are talking superheroes here, and most superheroes do not use firearms. Yes, I realize that the Punisher uses firearms, but he's not actually a superhero. He's a vigilante. There's a difference. Anyway, let's take a look at the skills here. Most of this stuff in here doesn't matter. The languages is not going to matter. Of course, the tools not going to matter as well, although you do get access to land vehicles here. So, again, if you play your cards right and you've got a cooperative GM, that could be your Zord. Just saying. As for the skills, most of these skills, if you're in a high-action game, which if you're doing, martial arts superhero stuff is probably going to be the case, most of these are not going to be that big of a deal. But two that I definitely wanted to give were acrobatics and athletics. Because, again, martial arts, highly athletic maneuvers, and acrobatics. Just saying. Gonna want to have those. And for those of you who are saying, oh, but they've got points in Wizard, what do they need these skills for? I played a warlock that ended up being a running gun kind of a warlock. And by sheer accident, and I ended up taking a feat that allowed her even greater flexibility by allowing her to re-roll botched rolls for her athletics and acrobatics checks. Tell me those two skills are not useful for wizards or spellcasters. I freaking dare you! Okay, starting equipment. Again, I largely ignored that because, well, it didn't fit what I wanted to do with this character for the, again, modern magic. I did add a custom bit of gear. Normally, wizards would have either a component pouch or an arcane focus. But since we have a technomancer, I wanted to give them a special piece of gear that works both as the transformation device, the spellbook, and the ability to summon weapons. Because let's face it, most of the time, you don't see the heroes carrying their weapons around. Most of the time, they pull them out of their ass or something. So I went ahead and added a piece of custom gear called the Chaos Fuser, which is, again, going to be what you'll load mage armor onto, and what you'll use as your spellbook, and also what you'll use to draw your weapons. It's all about flavor text with these, you see. Moving up, the one things that I did give, of course, no armor, no shield, because we have magic taking care of that. We don't need that, even accounting for the fact that, there is a paladin class involved. Monks usually don't use armor anyway. Wizards definitely don't. Paladins usually do, but again, we have that taken care of by mage armor, and I also gave them the spell shield. So, with those two combined, their AC can be round about 19, which seems low, especially if you play 4E, but for 5E, it's pretty darn good. The weapons that I did give, of course, I gave a longsword for her signature weapon. The laser pistol, again, sidearm. If you're using it just as a sidearm, you may want to play around with how much damage it does. Talk to your DM, get that balanced. And a dagger, just again, kind of as a lower tech sidearm for at times when, say, you're fighting against monsters that are immune to radiant damage. Now let's get into a few more of the spells. Of course, the cantrips are not really important. There were some spells available in the modern magic, but none of them really fit what I wanted to do. So I ignored those and went ahead with some of the normal spells. Some notable ones to discuss would be I gave I believe Elyn, I gave Blade Ward. What that does is it helps boost their resistance to slashing, piercing attacks from blades. Just, again, a product of durability. There are also some spells in here that are primarily related to the paladin that are mostly healing spells. So things like... well, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there are some paladin ones in here that are mostly for curing. Anyway, I gave a few fire spells, again, because of the elemental. If you have the monk with the Path of the Four Elements, you don't have to do this as much, and you can choose whatever other spells that you want. This is just what I've picked for this particular character, and you'll be able to play around with it as you wish. But the important one, of course, that we gave is shield and, again, mage armor. Mage armor programmed in. Shield is one that you can just go ahead and prepare and cast afterward during your regular turn. The other ones that you can use to help out, magic weapon. That's one that I picked, and it helps basically turn your longsword into a magic weapon. So if you don't actually have a magic longsword, you can add an additional bonus to it. And at higher level play, that's an absolutely critical one to have. I only have, at most, third level spells, just because of the way that multi-class spellcasting works. So we don't have a whole lot of spells to work with, but we do have a good bundle of them. So yeah, here's the summary page, some other notable things. Here are her final stats. 17 in strength, 15 in dexterity, 12 constitution, 15 intelligence, 14 in wisdom, 13 in charisma, of course. Because of course we didn't give any bonus to stats because we chose feats instead. Saving throws. Intelligence and wisdom are by far the highest saving throws there. Armor class, by base it is 13, which is con plus your dexterity mod. Which is 10 plus con mod plus dexterity mod for unarmored. But again, that will easily go up to 19 after mage armor and shield. Passive insight, passive investigation, passive perception. Again, those necessarily are not going to be like real big thing. How you determine passive stats is get your bonus plus 10. So base athletics, passive athletics would be a 19 if you need to roll a 19 to save something. Total hit points. because of all of the dice that are involved from all the various different classes, the maximum hit points that Elyn can have is 184, which is a pretty nice little bundle of hit points. She's going to be sticking around for a while. And yeah, she has a total of 66 hit dice of 66, 68, and 8d10. And you use those to heal in between battles. Plus 9 attack bonus to longsword. So if you roll a 10 or better, you're probably going to be hitting fairly regularly. Laser pistol plus 8. If you roll 11 or better, you're going to be hitting pretty regularly. So you've got a good 50-50 shot of being able to hit people most of the time. With the dagger and the unarmed strike as well. Oh, and the longsword? It is a versatile weapon, so you can deal damage with it one-handed, or if you wield it two-handed, your damage goes up to a d10. Nice, huh? Okay, features and traits, I'm going to go through just like one or two of the key ones and focus on those. Especially because, well, you can't see all the features there anyway. Flurry of blows. As monks, you tend to have key points depending on how many levels that you have in monk. In this case, we have 6 key points. And during battle, you can spend key points in order to make an additional 2 unarmed strikes. So you can basically attack 3 times. So get a nice combo in there. And again, that's because of it being the way of the open hand. You can knock them down. You can stun them if you attack with your weapon with the stunning strike. Spend a key point, and they must make a DC 17, which I imagine is probably going to be a con save. So let's just say they have a Constitution modifier of 1, and they're having to make a DC 17 save. That means they have to roll a 16 or higher in order to not be stunned. That's a pretty good, powerful move there. Oh, and key empowered strikes, your unarmed strikes count as magical. So, which of course, yeah, Power Rangers, any substantially advanced technology can easily be confused for magic. I know I butchered the Arthur C. Clarke quote. Let's move on. Okay, and here, of course, we have all the spells that are prepared. We do have some additional spells that you can use. And sometimes you can take spells and actually cast them in a higher slot. So, for instance, while we don't have ability to use level 4 or level 5 spells, you do have level 4 and level 5 spell slots. So, if you do that, you can cast Magic Weapon as, say, a level 4 spell and make your weapon have a bonus of +2. Nice, huh? And then here's the breakdown of some of the spells here. You probably can't read them super well, even if you're at full screen. But really the most important one that I wanted to draw attention to here would be Protection from Energy. I thought about going with the Modern Magic spell Protection from Ballistics, but then I realized that most of the time in those superhero shows, the monsters don't use firearms. Most of the time they attack with energy as well, so might as well just keep it be Protection from Energy. So yeah, that is the build. That is the build for Elyn. If you have any other suggestions for something akin to those lines that you would like to see, by all means, leave that down in the comments below. If you've got any other suggestions for any kind of builds that you'd like to see me try to do, let me know and I'll queue it up for after I've gotten the entirety of Project Fusion done. So, until next time, I am the Shadowbird Jeremy. Keep it casual, y'all.